K-State Culturally is virtual programming centered on celebrating, uplifting, and educating the Wildcat community through the lens of communities of color connected or affiliated with Kansas State University.
My name is Alix Adio. I came from Cameroon, Central Africa, to study in Manhattan. And I graduated in social sciences at K-State, then got my master's in public relations. That was the passion that brought me to the US to learn more about public relations, because back then in 2009, there was no such discipline being taught in universities. So I've known Sara and Jess here through several activities and extracurricular activities that I would do back then on campus. The International Student Scholar will have activities and I will be involved in them. And also I had a chance to serve as the president of the African Student Union. And it was a great experience, and that's how I've had a chance to work with both you, Sara, and Jessica. So now, Jess, you go.
Well, I'm Jessica Elmore, and I'm the Associate Director for Diversity Programs for the K-State Alumni Association. I am a two-time K-State grad. I got my MBA from K-State in 2006, and then a doctorate in educational leadership in 2015. And I have the pleasure of doing all of our programming for our domestic multicultural and international alumni. And so, of course, through that work, I've had the privilege to build a wonderful and beautiful relationship with Sara Thurston. And now I get to work alongside Alix. So it's just been a true joy. So I'm really excited about the work I get to do.
So, hi everyone, I'm Sara Thurston. I'm the Director of International Student and Scholar Services. I've been at K-State for over 13 years. I'm a native of Wisconsin and previously also lived in Louisville, Kentucky and Chicago, Illinois. And I love my relationship with the Alumni Association under Amy Button-Renz's leadership and the great work that Jessica has established, all the international partnerships, and now Alix is working there. The Alumni Center is just a fabulous connection for our international students.
That's great. We'll just go right in. Sara, we have a few questions that we'd love for you to answer and get to know more about the international community at K-State and how you have been working and interacting with all of that. So how would you describe the international community at K-State?
Well, I'd say it's fabulous. I feel so lucky to be able to work with such a dynamic group of students and scholars and families from all over the world. I don't have exact numbers for fall yet, but my guess is that we'll probably have around 1,300 international students, scholars, and their families in the community. And they come from well over 100 countries. And so the diversity that all these students bring to K-State is really amazing. There are so many different perspectives that the students bring, and I think it enriches the entire campus and the learning opportunities for all of the K-State community.
That's super. Now, I know that your office, the International Student Scholars, it's the first stop for every international student. I remember myself that when I first got here, that was the first place I would go, talk about visa, talk about also of immigration and how to yourself in the American culture. So tell us what are some of the fun memories that you would share with us and with you working with international students, but also international students group on campus?
Sure. So you did a great job of summarizing what our office does. We have the regulatory compliance piece that is the part that we have to do. And then we have all the fun programs and activities which obviously are more fun to talk about. But we have so many amazing students and student groups. And we really, I mean, I'm able to experience the entire student cycle at K-State. So some students I've even met in their home countries as a prospective student, and then see them all the way through, to graduation. And so it's really exciting to kind of see that progress of the students. But one of my favorite times of the year is new student orientation. And so that takes place every August and January. So because of COVID, this year is a little bit different. And so we recorded all of our presentations and did an online orientation. But I do love orientation a lot, and I really missed meeting all the new students. So I've offered to meet with new students by Zoom. And so I've invited them to a 15-minute Zoom session. So some have lasted 10 minutes, some have lasted 30 minutes, but I have enjoyed every single minute of those meetings, having a meaningful interaction with each of the new students, hearing their story, finding ways that I can connect them to campus and the community. So it's been really fun, and I'm really happy that I decided to do that. Because I was definitely missing orientation, because orientation gives me this like excitement and drive to start each semester. And one of the really fun things that happens at our orientation is something that Jessica does. And so I would like Jessica to tell us and share what she does to welcome all the new international students each year.
Well, I don't even know how many years ago it was, but I was asked to originally partner with the admissions department to do like this Purple Pride type of session, because of course when international students come from all over the world and they come to a traditional college campus where we have colors and songs and all these things, it is a little like jarring, like what is that and why are people doing this stuff, right? And so our job was to kind of let people know what those traditions and why we love and are so crazy about purple. And so when I was working on the presentation, it started off just kind of giving this information about football and all these like random things. And as I've been doing work within the international community, I'm like, it's geared toward them. So we've got to look at how to bring this information that could be familiar. And one, football means soccer in other places, and football is really an Americanized thing. So when I was talking about the sports, I wanted to bring in things that I know, like soccer or tennis and things like that. So just really wanted to kind of do an overhaul to make sure that it focused on our international students and the cultural aspects that would be familiar. And so, of course, the idea is, how do you build your Purple Pride? So when you're building your Purple Pride, I try to break it down into practical ways that don't take too much energy. So like wearing purple, like that's a big deal at our school. So it's like, can you get a purple shirt? They're giving out free shirts definitely the first week of school. So, wearing purple, or going to events and networking and the friendly family atmosphere. And then the fun stuff is learning like the alma mater and learning the Wabash and learning the fight song. And that's probably my favorite, because usually people are looking around like, is this a real thing? And you're doing this workout, you're sweating, and you don't even know. But then the joy is when they go to their first like basketball game or football game and it's familiar, it really brings in that spirit that I too am a part of the community. And so that's what gives me so much joy, that I have the opportunity to do that. So since it was virtual, we definitely had to go all out. So Division of Communication and Marketing recorded me doing all those things. I might be able to post that video for all to see, but it was such a joy. And I really hope that the international students really were able to feel the energy and love that we at Kansas State University have for our international community.
It's my favorite session at orientation in person, because I get to do it with Jessica. And we get all the student volunteers to help with it. It's really so much fun and fantastic. And we do incorporate other aspects of the school spirit in orientation. So usually in fall, there's a pep rally, there's the marching band preview that we take students to. And so instead of feeling like they don't belong, like what are these people around me doing? The students already know, like, oh, we get to practice this, and they're so excited. And the same thing in spring, where we try to always take the students to a women's basketball game. And so the same thing is like, ooh, now you get to practice what Jessica taught you. And so, I mean, it's a great introduction to the Alumni Association for our students. And then, you know, we have collaborations throughout while they're here. But then another thing that I wanted to mention, you know, graduation is another time of year that's like my favorite. I just love my job in general. So pretty much every day is amazing. But these big milestones are really special to me. And I try really hard to make the graduate school graduation semester, each semester. And I found this perfect place to sit in Bramlage Coliseum, where all the PhD students and half of the master's students walk out. And so many of our PhD students that graduate are international. And so like I'm congratulating like pretty much every student that walks by, and then when there's a US student that I don't know, I'm like, congrats, because there's so many that I know. And so, you know, many of our students, they don't have family that are able to come for graduation. And so I'm just really happy that I can be there to support them on, you know, a really special day for them. And, you know, graduation time is also a time that the Alumni Association has created something really special for our international students. And so Jessica, can you talk a little bit about the graduation reception and leadership recognition ceremony that you do?
Yeah, so I think now we're going on almost maybe our 8th year after our conversation about our international graduation celebration and our international leadership awards. And what was interesting is that, you know, we've always had the multicultural leadership awards and our multicultural graduation, which is great, and international students and all students have been invited. But it was when I had a chance to have a conversation with Sara about how do I make sure that the programming that the association is offering is impactful and meaningful to the community. And what we had found is that although it's all multicultural, how K-State kind of separates the activities as international. We'll refer to the international department, we'll refer to international programming, that kind of thing. And then here you come to graduation and it's multicultural. And it's just like, well, I don't really identify, or I hadn't been utilizing that term throughout my career at K-State. So is this really for me? And so, you know, in all things diversity, it's like, well, can we just all do it together? It's the same thing. And honestly, it's not. You know, when you think about our international community and what they're bringing to K-State, they're bringing a whole different perspective that's not Americanized, which is extremely valuable to all of us for our learning. And so the International Graduation Celebration is a true celebration, not just of them accomplishing a major milestone, but also how they've brought their full culture to the Manhattan community and has been so open and willing to share that with us. It's something to celebrate. It's something that we should not and cannot take for granted. And so that's the heart of that event, is to really celebrate with our international students and to really just say that, you know, it doesn't stop here. You know, you are K-State alum, and no matter where you are in the world, we want to connect with you. Embedded within that celebration is our International Leadership Award winners. And this is, once again, a chance for us to highlight students who have gone above and beyond on top of their degree programs. And Sara, you're right. A lot of them are PhD and master's students. And when you think about going and getting your master's, your PhD on top of being in another country, and you still give your time of running organizations and being presidents and sitting on SGA and all that stuff, that has to be rewarded. And so that's just a really awesome opportunity for us to let our students know we see you and we thank you. And so they get a plaque, and we do some really great giveaways. And so this past COVID season, we weren't able to do that. And we had some rock star award winners. So I had the chance to look at the applications from the nominations, and I pulled out special comments from those nominators and recorded video in front of Anderson Hall, which is super iconic for us, and just wanted to be able to love on and celebrate our international alumni in a very public and shareable way, because they deserve for everybody to know how much we appreciate them. And COVID-19 will not keep us from celebrating their accomplishments, because it's been awesome. So yeah, so that's what those programs are about. And I just hope that as they go throughout their careers and things like that, that they really see that we love them. And I learned that from you, Sara. Like, I want to know, like, how did you get to this point to where it's like it's so ingrained and it's such an authentic piece? Like, how did that develop? Like, what's the story behind how much you care and you give?
Well, it was when I was an undergrad. So I studied Spanish and art history, and I studied abroad in Spain. And the first I studied abroad, I went through, my faculty member told me, go here. And his friend owned this language school. It'll be great. You'll be fine. and I really wasn't. I didn't speak Spanish at the time at all. Though I thought I did. I had probably maybe 6 years of Spanish from like high school, middle school, first year of college. And I got to Spain and I was completely lost. There were no student services. I can't really tell you all the stories that happened, kind of even within the first like 24 hours. It was like a complete disaster. Like everything that could have happened probably happened in those 24 hours. And even though that was a long time ago, I will never forget how I felt in a new country with nobody to help me. And time, like sometimes when I talk to students now, things are really different then. There were no cell phones. There wasn't even email, I was getting, paper in the mail about my experience. And so there was, help was so far away. While I was gone, I was able to call my parents like one time because it was so expensive to make that phone call. And so even though, things are easier in terms of technology now, I will never forget those feelings that I had. And in the end, I had the most amazing experience and grew so much from struggling to overcome the difficulties that I had, that I knew that I wanted to do something to help people with their transition to the US, or helping US students experience that study abroad experience. And so I ended up, I'd worked as an undergrad, and I was an RA and hall director through my master's program. And I knew that that was the field that I wanted to go in. And so I have done that through my entire career. It was, a chosen career. And I really appreciate, the friendships and the relationships and the constant learning that I have the opportunity to experience in working in this field. So that's kind of how it all started, Jessica. So I also wanted to mention, though, that there are all these amazing student groups on campus.
Right.
And so they have events like all throughout the year. And there are two groups in particular that our office work with, International Buddies. And so that's a group that pairs U.S. and international students in small groups, and they promote friendship and cultural learning. And then the other group is called International Coordinating Council, and they plan lots of international events like food festivals, sports championships, social events. And then in the spring, there's a week-long international week that has an international fashion show, talent show, panel discussion, cultural exhibition, there's a parade across campus, and some international dance lessons. And so both of those two groups provide a lot of really awesome activities for the campus. But then there are so many other like culture-based groups at K-State that, I mean, there are events all the time that are offered on campus. And I try my hardest to support as many of them as I can because I love seeing the students thriving outside of their academic field. So, you know, like as you said earlier, Jessica, I mean, it's amazing how much the students are giving outside of their rigorous PhD program, their research, and then they go lead a student group. So, Alix, you mentioned earlier that you're president of the African Student Union. Can you tell us about some of those activities that you did with ASU?
Yes, actually. So I want to go back a little bit and just saying what you shared was so beautiful. You know, your experience in Spain, and thanks, Jess, for actually coming and asking Sara how she actually got that drive, you know, and love for international students. So as the ASU at K-State, the main goal is to educate the community about Africa, the culture, and its heritage. So for me being a leader, my role was to coordinate a team to facilitate activities on campus to actually meet that goal. So we did a lot of activities, sometimes among us, because also one thing that we need to understand is, and I'm sure you two know, Africa is huge. There's a lot of countries and a lot of cultures in Africa that me as a Cameroonian, I don't know. So we, my role was also to get Africans to know each other, because that's the main thing, right? At first, let's know each other, and then we can show ourselves to the world. So we have some internal activities that we do as Africans, and also we have some activities that we would do for the entire community. So we did a whole bunch of activities. I remember once we did a flash mob where we danced, we had all the African rhythms, and it was crazy. I dressed up like those African with the skirts, and we're always colorful with how we dress. And so we just dance, and we do a lot of waist dancing and things like that. And so much fun. And we also hosted the African Food Festival in the Jordan apartment, where we showcase just the food. We invite everybody to come and taste the food from all across Africa. And we try to grasp every region, so North, South, West, and East Africa. So, and we have usually every year our biggest event as the association, the African Association, which is the African Cultural Night. There, it's not only the students that put together, but it's more the entire African community in Manhattan and vicinity that come together and put activities that are fun. We do from fashion shows to sharing our foods to our rhythms and comedy, anything that could facilitate that main goal of educating the community where we're at about Africa and its heritage. It's always a lot of fun, and it's usually around that International Week, Sara, that you mentioned earlier. And yeah, so much fun. So that's mainly the role of me being the president, just bringing a team together and just let's have fun and sharing people what we do.
I remember all those events so fondly. And I think that what always impresses me, not just about ASU, but all the international student groups, is they're always so open and welcoming to people that are not part of their groups to come to their events, to be a part of them. I remember many, ASU events where even people from other cultures were taught the dances or were a part of the group, etc. That just including everyone in those cultural celebrations is really a lovely part of the student organizations we have at K-State.
Yes, for sure. Now, I want to hear from both of you still again, and Sarah will go first. I know you mentioned earlier the COVID-19 and how it had all of you adapt to how you could still keep that same excitement for the international community that is coming in to the state. So can you share with us how ways has COVID impacted the African community here?
Well, I'm going to talk about all the international communities, but you know, in spring we had probably around 1,500 international students, and most people think that our students left, they went home. Well, they didn't. The majority stayed here. We probably only had maybe like 100 students that actually went home. So the number of students that actually left the U.S. was quite small. But, you know, we've still been trying to help everyone with their immigration status, and that has been occurring through, you know, Zoom and things like that. But then I had also tried really hard to reach out to many students. Unfortunately, there aren't enough hours in the day to reach out to all the students, but I reached out to as many students as I could to have individual video calls with them to find out how they were doing personally, and just being able to, you know, I was usually solving like really small problems, you know, that like someone had an issue, but to them it was a big problem. But for me, it's like, well, I knew the answer, like I can help you with that. And so, you know, not being afraid to like ask the questions because maybe I have a resource that I can help you with. So, I mean, I connected students with bikes and bike paths and Cat's Cupboard in town, and just all sorts of different things. You know, the university now has some emergency funding that's open to all students. And so helping students become aware of that. K-State Proud, which also funds all students. So just trying to make sure that the students were connecting, even tutoring. Some students thought that they couldn't get tutoring. Like, well, no, it's all still happening. It's just virtual. So making sure that students were getting all those connections. And then we've also had some opportunities. There have been some funding organizations in the United States that have given away some emergency funding. And so we've had 2 rounds of those. And so I've met with quite a few students to first kind of select who was going to be sent forward from K-State, and then forwarding those names to the organization. And so I've heard lots of student stories about, you know, like what's going on in their lives and what their worries are and what their concerns are. And I can tell you that, you know, this weighed on my heart. You know, there were many nights that I couldn't sleep because I heard stories all day of the stress, you know, from their families and what was happening in their home country, and not having, you know, reliable information about what was going on, and their families were worried about them. And, you know, we have had students, you know, that have had COVID. We've had students who, you know, have had family members with COVID. And, you know, one student even in particular had a death because of COVID in their family. So I think, you know, all of these stressors, along with trying to adapt to a new way of school. And I think that, you know, this fall, everyone's more prepared to do the online classes and the virtual learning, and have learned from what didn't work in spring when we had to throw it together kind of quickly. You know, we were, unfortunately, you know, our office, you know, canceled many of our programs, but now and so now we plan on having, you know, our programs in fall, but virtual. And so, you know, kind of the time with spring and summer has really given us that time to prepare and have things a little bit differently. You know, like I mentioned, some of our students did go home, and so those students had some challenges with either internet connections or the time that a live class might happen compared to their time zone. And then lots of people, you know, I mentioned the different financial aid opportunities. We've had lots of students struggle financially. And a couple of things that I, you know, have definitely made it maybe worse for international students are, you know, like sometimes the currency exchange isn't that great anyway, but now the currency rate from is even worse. So the amount of money that they have when converted to dollars isn't what they had before. Some countries, the banks closed, so there was no access. So they were expecting, you know, like payments from their country that their parents would wire the money, but it just wasn't happening at all. There were also some didn't allow the money to leave the country. So while the bank may be open, they weren't allowing money to leave the country. You know, just like in the US, people had been furloughed and then not having the resources to send. Businesses, there were people that owned businesses and they lost their business because of COVID. And then, you know, it was very difficult to get an on-campus job this summer here at K-State. And so many students, especially our PhD students who are here on assistantships, kind of depend on those summer opportunities to pay for their living expenses. And of course, you know, some of these students also have families here. So, you know, a wife, multiple children. And so to think about surviving on their assistantship from spring to last them for the entire summer because those opportunities, you know, weren't there was extremely challenging. So, you know, we did have some students that, you know, had internships and were able to keep them, but we also had students that had internships that then were taken back because they didn't want to have interns in their companies because of COVID. So, I mean, I think the financial challenges have been great, and especially with summer. So that was definitely challenging. And just like with, you know, domestic students with families, then there's also the struggle of childcare, you know, when the schools closed and they were trying to, you know, do their research, write their dissertation, and now they had children at home that weren't home before. And so those school hours were the time that they worked their hardest so that they could, you know, then pay attention to the kids when they came home, but now they were there all the time. So I think, you know, that was another, you know, issue for many. We have a great number of Muslim students. There were some major holidays that occurred while we've been in quarantine. So Ramadan happened, Eid happened, and these are celebrations within the community that happen that they may not be home. Okay, so normally they get to celebrate with their family. So family is great, but now they're here. So then they celebrate with their community here, but those couldn't even happen. So it was, you know, a very difficult time for even the celebration of some major holidays for many of our students. And I think, I'm trying to think. So, I mean, you know, our students are so resilient. And, you know, I spoke with one student. We were being interviewed for a newspaper article. And the reporter really wanted her to be negative. And she wasn't going to go there. She was like, I have come to the United States. I am away from my family. Do you know how many challenges I've overcome by being in the United States? I have overcame everything. I can handle COVID-19. I've got this. I'm prepared to deal with this. And I was so proud of her for sharing that, you know, resilient piece. And And I think it's true. And I think that many international students could relate to that. Because no matter all this stuff is happening, you know, they're all like, well, I'm here to do my PhD. I'm here to do I'm here to get my degree. I'm going to get this. Like, COVID is not going to stop me. And so I think that, you know, no matter what the challenge is, I think that, you know, the students have been really working hard to overcome those challenges. You know, and unfortunately, we've also had, excuse me, some students experience some xenophobic comments on Facebook and Twitter, etc. And that's another challenge that has been going on during this time of COVID that has been happening to our students.
I love everything that you said, Sarah. And honestly, I think this brings to all of us this question as to like we as K-Staters, whether we work here or whether we are, you know, we go to school here or anything, or whether we just a part of the K-State community in general, because I know family, it's a big deal here in Manhattan, in the K-State. So I want to know, like, let's see, how can we K-Staters support the international community here?
So I think some of the things are so broad that they can support any community. So, you know, one is participate in activities and learn about people that are different than you. That's going to support all K-Staters. Is if everyone is trying to learn more about the world that we live in, and the experiences that different people experience. We all have different experiences, all three of us that are on this call. And we can all learn from each other every day. And so being open to those opportunities. And then I think overall just being kind to the people that you meet, and approaching situations with kindness and openness, I think is like key. And so, I mean, I also think, you know, like there are so many opportunities in Manhattan, so many. So people will say to me that Manhattan is not diverse. And I say, that's because you are not hanging out in the right places.
Yep.
My life is so diverse, so diverse. And my life is not diverse because of my job. It's because that's how I choose to live my life. And I have always chosen to live my life that way. And that's also how I choose to raise my child. This is, and that it's our mindset that I think really needs to be stretched, because Manhattan can be diverse if you want it to be. If you don't want it to be, then you don't see the diversity in our community. But there is so much diversity in our community. And so I encourage people to take opportunities to learn different things. So I can talk about a couple of things that our office does that can help people in the community learn about different communities and people and experiences. So we do have an international coffee hour, which is going to be virtual this fall. So it's going to be more accessible than ever, right?
Yes.
Unfortunately, we won't be serving food virtually, but it's still going to be awesome.
Yeah.
And so we host a international coffee hour 5 times a semester in fall and spring. And we don't repeat a country for 5 years. So think about like an undergraduate student experience at K-State. If you really wanted to learn about different cultures, you have this opportunity 10 times a year to learn about a different country. And if you're here for 4 years, you could have learned about 40 different countries, right? If you're here for 5 years, that's 50 countries. Like, what an awesome opportunity. So this semester, we're going to do Mexico, Turkey, Paraguay, Nepal, and Iran. Jessica supports all of these programs. And Alix, didn't you present Cameroon?
I can't remember.
I think you did.
We had, I think I did, yes, and I did the puff puff. Yes, I remember. Yes, and you're right. It's been so long. I can't even remember because you have all the other countries that you even forget about that you did yours. Amazing. Yes, I did actually. Yeah. These
Yep.
are really, really great events, and I will only wish that there's more of the Manhattan community and the other students that are like the case staters, more people to come to that event for sure, because it's always a lot of knowledge. These candidates that actually volunteer, because I have to say, it's Sarah, this is just simple volunteering, and you make a dish to share, and the fact that we come together, we just bring together like a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation about the country, and always so eager to share, just like Jessica said earlier,
Yeah.
so eager to share, and even wanting to tell you more, to say, after this, I can tell you some more. I'm pretty sure sometimes we even past the limit of the time that we are allocated to present. But yes, I love coffee hours.
And coffee hour is always filled with, faculty, staff,
Mhm.
students from the US,
Yes,
international students. It's a really diverse group.
it is.
And there's never a coffee hour that I don't learn something new. Like there's always
Always.
something interesting that you've learned about a new culture. We also have basic language training, and that is a non-credit language course. It's only $35 for 8 weeks. The semester we're going to have Spanish, both a basic version and a more advanced, a Mandarin Chinese one that's also basic or advanced, Russian and Portuguese. And so our current students teach those classes, and is not for a grade. So I mean, we have adult community members. We've had high school students wanting to practice a little bit extra outside of class. And of course, the student who teaches it, you learn a lot about where they're from. So I mean, Spanish, for example, one semester your teacher may be from Mexico, and another they might be from Paraguay. So you're also learning a lot about different countries and the different cultures that the students are from. And it's just really fun and an informal way. You don't normally have homework, but it's a great chance to get together a couple times a week to practice and learn more. I also coordinate tons of events for community groups or classes on campus. We call it the International Speakers Bureau. So I may get a request from, either a classroom. I have one that I'm going to work on tomorrow, actually, for an undergraduate class at K-State, where they want to have some international students come in and talk about their experiences at K-State. So I will find some students to come in and talk to the class. We've done it for community groups like the Optimist Club and the 4-H. I mean, we've done it for all sorts of different groups, and so we can do that. Again, we have international buddies, international coordinating council, all the different international student groups that have activities, and there's also a community group called World Friendship, which is a group of all women who meet in the basement of the First Presbyterian Church. And they meet every Tuesday from 9 until 11. If you don't have a car, they provide like carpooling. If you have children, they have childcare. And the rules are no men, no politics, no talk of religion. So it's simply about being friends with other women. And it's an amazing support group for the women that come with their husbands to K-State. And it gives them a sense of community and other people to talk with while their husband may be busy with their programs. So that's a really great opportunity. And you can find out about most of the stuff on our Facebook page or on our listserv, on our website. But just in general, be curious and like want to learn more. Like, don't be shy to learn more.
Yeah.
And I guess the last thing that I'd like to say is that share your holidays with other people. So if you happen to know that someone's from another culture, try to include them in your celebration. And so I've celebrated many holidays with internationals, from Independence Day to Halloween and trick or treating. And again, I've also celebrated other students' holidays with them. So Indian Independence Day, Ramadan, Eid. So, because I share my holidays with others, people share their holidays with me. And it is so enriching. And I usually, when I'm asked, sometimes I don't even know why I do the things that I do for a holiday, right? It's the way my family does it. So I usually think about it, and I talk to the students, and when I'm sharing something, I'm like, so this is what my family does. But I know that not every family does it this way. With Thanksgiving, when I was in school in Louisville and I went home with someone for Thanksgiving, they didn't celebrate Thanksgiving anyway like my parents did. The side dishes were different, like everything was different. But so when I share, I usually give that caveat, like the United States is a really diverse country. And this is my experience from where I've grown up and what I've learned. But I know that there are lots of people that celebrate this completely different.
Yes.
And so I always kind of put that caveat out there when I'm sharing about the holiday that I'm celebrating or that we're celebrating together, etc. So don't be afraid to invite people to celebrate your holiday with you.
Very, very cool, Sarah. Now, Jessica, do you have anything to add? Because I know that I have seen you in parties, like Nepalese parties, Sri Lankan parties, African parties. From your experience, do you have anything to add when it comes to support that we could provide to our international community?
What I would say is everything that Sarah has said, and you are right. Like, I try to immerse myself in a very non-disruptive way. Like, I just want to be a part and experience and understand the mission and goals and purposes and values within groups. So it's a little awkward in the beginning because you're always the new kid on the block. But when people see that your heart and intention is to truly be of the community and not try to take advantage of the community, it's always a welcoming space. So I'm not going to go down the road with what Sarah said because she told us everything that I agree wholeheartedly. The one thing that I will add is financial. We have some very wonderful and generous alumni all over the world. And, the financial aspect is a very important one. And I will always stand to say that our international students are just as deserving of the resources. And I commend our KSU Foundation for continuing to advocate and reach out to our alum donors and friends. But for those who are interested, it's like you don't have to have $1 trillion, to finally give that lifetime gift, but every little bit counts. But then those who do have capacity, we have a lot of postdocs. We have, our PhDs, our master's students, like with those degrees, they don't always account to more money, but you do have the capacity. So when I interact with alumni all over the world, they want to know how they can give in an impactful way. And the experience, and Sarah, you laid it out so well about all the different things. We're talking about necessity items, like eating and making sure that someone has childcare. Like, the heart of the alumni that I talk to, when they want to know about our students, they want to know how they can help. And these are really specific areas that they can help. So definitely the KSU Foundation probably has some already created funds that can be, that you can give to. But if you in your own space want to create your own, what I would say is make it unrestricted. Make it unrestricted so that it can get to the people who need the dollars. And that's one of the proud things that I say about the K-State Alumni Association is that we do have some international student scholarships. And how I like to focus on that is by their ability to be involved on campus and be leaders on campus. And that's really the criteria. So I wanted to make sure that I at least added that part, that the financial is also a very key cornerstone to that. So for people who have the ability to share, I would highly recommend that on top of the other things that Sara shared.
Yeah, thank you, Jess. That's a major point for sure, because I myself, I learned working with the Alumni Association that I don't need to be a billionaire or a millionaire, which I'm not even near that yet. So to actually contribute. And that's something that I think most of us don't know that have graduated. We could, it's something that we need to know more about to say, okay, well, because I, first of all, I got involved in this because I'm exposed, to more information, right? And for me to decide to start giving some part, dedicate some of my earning money to help other students. What people need to understand is that if you give 25, 50, and that's what makes a big 700 that you could get, that a student can get. And then the Alumni Association try, and even the national office, I remember because I was beneficiary of both of the money when I was, because I know some people ask me sometimes, Alex, how did you do this? Man, it's so expensive. I was like, look, I came here with hope. We all from a middle class family wanting to go finish the studies, because now it's a little different. But when I came here in the 2000, when you graduate from the US, you're a big deal back home. Now it's online work and all that. It's decreased a little bit, but the goal was for me to come get a degree in the US. So when I go, I'm considered to be like good education, and which it is. For some of my whether African, I have a lot of Sri Lankan friends and Asia friends, and they would ask me, "How did you do this?" And I said, even my husband asked me, "Wow, you finished school at the U.S. university with very less debt?" And I told him, well, it was thanks to the scholarships. I was trying my best to figure out. I had people that Jessica that advocates for that from the foundation, and then Sara, who always brings the information to us as much as she can. And I will just seize the opportunity. Some of us don't think we can apply, like we are able to do it because of some of the criteria, but it has improved a lot from the time that I came to K-State to now. When I read the criteria, so some work has been done for sure to make it available for people that come from abroad, overseas, to get the money opportunity. It's definitely I'm thankful that I'm able to also now contribute that, and I know that the sky is the limit as to how I can provide my support to the community that I belong first as an international, right? And also to K-State in general. And this is not just, I want to say, even that financial burden, it's not just international students that go through that. We all know that school is expensive. So I think K-State has put a lot of efforts in actually, because when I talk to some of my other students and friends that are in other big cities, they don't get those opportunities. So when Sara said this place is diverse, it's in many, many ways, like they try and thrive. K-State thrives to actually be the best university I'm not trying to be biased, but the best universities for international, because there's always a way. It doesn't matter whatever you do, there's always, however you feel, there's always a way, there's always a person that cares and just help you with your situation. So I love everything that you guys are sharing. That's beautiful. Now, Sara, I know that you travel sometimes to go abroad and meet with some K-State alumni, and you had that chance several times. So I want to know, let me know, let us know, how does it feel like to actually reconnect with your students when you're abroad?
Well, of course, it's super exciting because I would say the farewells are really sad with my international students because many of them go home, and I mean, the chances of seeing them again are really slim.
Mm-hmm.
So usually those farewells are pretty permanent. And, you know, like, yes, we'll stay connected, right? But it's different.
Yeah.
And so I always get teary-eyed at graduation. And, you know, usually by the time, you know, I leave Bramlage after congratulating everyone, I'm like, I'm never going to see them again. I'm so sad. But I have had some opportunities, and sometimes it's not just alums, it's also I've met parents. So I've
Oh.
had, like, you know, coffee or tea with a parent of a current student,
Mhm.
um, or met the uncle of a former student, because you know, the family wasn't free, but they were so, I mean, they had such this great experience at K-State. They still wanted someone in the family to come meet this person that was coming from K-State. I've met brothers and sisters, and like I mentioned when I talked about graduation, you know, not all of our students can have their parents come to visit them. I mean, the families are already making such a huge investment in the educational costs, that, you know, a family trip, you know, for graduation is super expensive. And so it is super special whenever I'm able to meet family of any sort in their home country, even more. So in 2011, I had a Fulbright to Korea, and I was able to meet up with a former ICC president, Yevon, and her mother, and that was like awesome. Um, and recently, I think it was 2018, I went to Paraguay, and
Mhm.
another ICC leader. I got to have dinner with her and catch up with her. Um, and when I traveled through United Arab Emirates on my way to India, I had a really long layover. And so I had time to kind of see the city. Well, I met up with a former student from Pakistan who was living in Abu Dhabi, who spent the entire day with me, showing me all the sights,
Mhm.
and, you know, then taking me to a Pakistani restaurant in the UAE. So a part of his culture as well as his new cultural home. In Turkey, I met with a student and a former scholar. Um, and in India, I've gone quite a few times. And those have been kind of the most fun kind of alumni interactions because I've met people that I didn't know. So I met alums as far back as like from the 60s. So, you know, before I was even born. And, you know, when there was one gentleman that I remember meeting who was like so nice. And he met me at a Starbucks, like at this mall. And so I had asked one of our students, can you suggest a place in your city? Is in Hyderabad, India. Because I don't know Hyderabad. So can you suggest a place for me to meet with alums that would be like convenient and well known and, you know, that kind of stuff? And they're like, Starbucks at this mall. And I was like, okay. So this, you know, gentleman that graduated in 63 came, and, you know, the nicest man, and also a prospective student came, right? So even though, you know, he and I were not at K-State at the same time, you know, our times did not overlap, hearing him reminisce about his times at K-State And, you know, like the people that he knew were not people that I knew, right? But it was still the same experience that I hear from more current alumni about how much people care, and like the kindness and the hospitality that, you know, he experienced in Manhattan was super special. Um, and then on a couple trips, I've met the same alum from the region of Ahmedabad in Gujarat. And he is from the College of Architecture. And so the second, you know, like we get to know each other better, right? Each time we see each other. And I got to see then a university that he designed from, you know, as an architect. And so that was really special as well. I was like, wow, this is the work of a K-State alum here in Mumbai, was where the university was. So that was really exciting. I went on vacation to India to attend a wedding of a K-State alum. And of course, that was really special. That experience, you know, is something that I'll never forget. But being able to share that really special moment in her life with her in her country, with her family, was pretty amazing. So, I mean, I think that it's great to reconnect with the alums if I know them, because it's great to see them again. Or if I don't know them, to meet them and to hear about that love of K-State that they still have after so many years of being here. And also, you know, seeing a country or seeing even a city in a country, the eyes of somebody that's actually there is awesome. And so, you know, the hospitality that I am showing wherever I travel is also something that influences how I live my life. I mean, I'm always like, I may not be able to repay the kindness that I'm given when I travel abroad, but I can pay that forward by showing kindness here in my own community. You know, the wedding that I attended in India, I was so happy to be able to host that family in my home when they came back to K-State to visit. That was so unique, you know, to be able to do that. But I mean, I just wanted to do everything, you know, to like make that the best possible experience ever, because of all the kindness that they had shown me when I was in their country. I think that's another really special thing, is being able to learn more and more deeply about where I'm at because of the more personal connection. Jessica has also
Yes, I was going to
traveled
say.
quite a bit and met alums, and I think you've even met some alumni groups. What can you share with us?
Yeah. Well, first, I'd like to say shout out to Dean Carol Shanklin, because that's my ride or die. When I do get a chance to travel, I've been on quite a few trips with her, and it's through her relationship that she has as an advisor, as a dean, and her ability to stay connected with alumni that I've benefited from our experience going. So I don't know if I would have had as rich of an experience if it wasn't for her hard work and relationship. I travel quite a bit with my husband, so it's always fun to do that together because he's a K-Stater too. So probably some of the experiences that I'll share would be, well, we went to Costa Rica. I think that was our first international trip, so that was my first time really out of the country, and for both of us, and it was a K-State alum, and the event was hosted at an alum's home, which was fabulous. They were so awesome, so welcoming. They found the caterer, everything, and it was such a vibe, a chill vibe. But like I learned so much about K-State from that lens, and from the Latinx culture experience and how much they wanted to give. So like the running theme when I travel internationally is how much they want to give and like how much they want to tell others about a great experience to come to Manhattan, Kansas. And it's really nice to see as a K-Stater that the purple and the fields and the Kansas landscape is such a iconic, memorable thing. So I take advantage of it even more because they don't get to see that all the time, and those are the things that they say they miss. So Costa Rica, I mean, they gave us the hookup on like where to go travel, like when we had a day to kind of see part of the country, food, coffee, that kind of stuff. So I'm a total foodie, so we did that. Taiwan, Taiwan alums showed out. We did two different types of events. One in like the top part and like the bottom part. It was like so crazy. And so we had like over 50 alum come to these events. And it was packed, and the stories that were shared, a couple of expats came, like things that I just didn't know. But what I also learned was how deep K-State's international acceptance and admission and graduates run. I mean, it was crazy. So, of course, Dr. Shu in the College of Business, we did karaoke. That was an interesting experience. But, just really, really great opportunities. I would say that we went to the Philippines, and that was probably one of my more emotional experiences. One, I was able to go with a former classmate, Amelia. We did our MBA program together, and so she's from the Philippines, and so she was one of our hosts. And so, of course, that was like red carpet, purple carpet, treatment. But at one of the events, we had a K-State student who passed away from being hit by a hit and run. And so her parents had actually come to the States for the first time to receive her degree. And so I had a chance to meet them. But when we had the event in the Philippines, the family came. So I was able to meet her brother and see her parents again. And that was super emotional. And that really was like, that's K-State family, and how we just were able to love on and celebrate and be with them. That I'll never, ever, ever forget that experience because of how we were introduced to each other, and then to be able to be reconnected again in their home country. We do perspective, Dean Shanklin will never miss an opportunity to recruit some students. So we ended up at a university in the Philippines. And so we were talking to, prospective students and having a really good time. And so Kedrick and I were at our international block party. I think it was in 2019. 2019. And so we're just doing our thing. And two of the students who we met in the Philippines as prospective students selected K-State, and they remembered us. And I was like flabbergasted because of that connection. And like we met so far away, and here you are in Manhattan. And so it's just really, really special. So I love the opportunity to travel internationally, connect with our international alumni. And you're right, like the older alum, I met an alum from like the 1970s, and she brought her ID card. It was yellow. Yeah, I have to drop a photo of that. But when I think about it, I'm like, you love K-State, you kept your K-State ID, so when I think and when I talk to like domestic students and domestic alumni, I'm like, you have no clue how tight that purple bond goes internationally. Like it's no other. And so that's our part of our fabric. And I just love that I get to be a part of that, and I get to see that in a different space. Always great treatment. Yebin Yoon, she's done the same thing when we went to South Korea, took us on, different, cultural experiences. And I had a fantastic time in South Korea with all of the K-State alum, and, just things that I'll never forget that are connected to K-State. So we are so thankful for the wonderful students and the care that they've received, that they are so welcoming and so eager to host us when we go. So those are a few of my stories.
That's amazing. That's amazing, Jessica. You still have to tell us how the karaoke went, though, sometimes later. But yeah, I tell you what, it's that first email that we receive and we get when we apply to K-State, I think that's what also set the tone. And let me tell you, because it's I know now because I applied to K-State and two other universities for my sister, and I can tell you the difference. I can tell you the difference of that first email that she got from K-State and from the two other universities not long ago. So I think the bond that you create with your advisor already, and I know I was telling Amy, the CEO here, that my mom said hi, and said she's very proud of me for sticking around with good people. So I know that's what she said, and the fact that they're comfortable and not calling me so much when I was in school, and even now, well, I know I'm already a grown up right now, and so, but the fact that they know that I'm here with another family, because I talked about Sara a lot, talk about Jess a lot, and say, hey, I have this, I have that. And my dad too, I remember when I first got here, he was exchanging emails with the international office. It was, I had Stacy as an advisor. Yeah, she was the one talking with him and exchanging and all that. So yes, it's from the get-go, that spirit of family, which would take us now to the last thing that I wanted to hear from you guys today. It's if there is anything, if there was to say one thing, let me say, because I know, like, just the way I did, there is a lot of students, even COVID, like you talk about the resilience, it's from home already that we build that. And when we decide to say, hey, I need to create my own path in life. I need to make my life. My dad did good, my mom did good, but I want to create something. That's actually the mindset that I had when I decided to jump in on the internet. Back then, it was in a cyber coffee where I would go and apply to universities. So I know that there are still a lot of students overseas, all around the world, that are applying to come to the U.S. To study, to pursue their studies. So if there's that one thing that you would like to share with them and say, hey, peak K-State and stick to it, because that's going to be the best alma mater that you will ever have. What would you say? I'm going to start with Sara. What would that be?
I think we've already all have said this at one time, but family. I think our students really identify with our, the K-State family thoughts, and we are the family away from home for our students. And so I think our students identify with that even more than maybe a domestic student, just because of the fact that the domestic student still has their family, like really close. But for many of our students, like, we are their family away from home. We are there for those milestones. It's our community that's celebrating their birthdays with them because they're so far away. And I think it really makes us unique. And K-State is a special place. I'm not a K-State alum, but I've drank that purple juice. K-State is very special, and it's the care that people exhibit, like, all throughout campus, like the genuine care for students, and the friendliness, and all of those things that I've mentioned. And the faculty who care so much about the students beyond their PhD research, right? It's the care in their lives. Worked with so many faculty over the years that clearly care so much about the students, and not just getting them through the program academically, but beyond that, and supporting them. So I think that, the campus, the community, we're a special place. And I'm proud to call K-State and Manhattan home.
Nice. Thank you, Sara. Jess?
What I would probably say is you want to come to K-State because this is a small community that is intentional about relationships. And, when you think of the United States, you've got New York, and you've got Los Angeles, and you've got Chicago. You've got all these big spaces, these exciting things that you see in movies and things like that. And you may say, I want to go there. But, being a person who is from California, and I love my home state, but what I've appreciated about Manhattan, Kansas, is the ability to kind of get settled. You can always travel the United States, but it's nothing like being in a place where it's 10 minutes to get from one side to the other, or to kind of get your bearings as you're in a new country. And, you still have all the resources that you need, and that people aren't so much on the hustle and bustle, that they can take the time to help explain some things that you don't know, or to actually build relationships. And then because it is such a small community, you're more open to building friendships with people that you may not have, because there's already an established group, or there's so many other extra things to do, that I love watching international students meet other international students from different countries who are now having a relationship. Because if you think about it, you may be in a place where you're all from the same culture. And so this too is a diversity experience, that you're able to benefit from, along with you coming from a different country, being able to benefit others. And so to be able to do that in a close-knit space, I feel like it's a lot richer that the students get to participate in. And some of those barriers that bigger cities have, that we don't have to deal with, that you can actually become a lot more centered in not just your studies, but then being absorbed within an American culture experience that you want, versus having to just like grind it out and just picking it up whenever you can, because it's so fast and so fierce. So I'd say take advantage of our unique community size, and the intentionality that we as Kansas State University have with our relationship with the Manhattan community.
Thank you, Jess. I love, today was great. It's so much to share with my people. I'm talking about the international community. They are really dear to me, because I feel like I belong to that community big time. So I know that when I came here, like I said earlier, I came with hope, and that was all I had that I could actually hold and say, this is what I got. That's it, Alix. Just, you're here now. Just figure it out. But every time that you ask K-State, it brings all the emotion of why I was really persistent with K-State, because I had a lot of other choices. I had, because you have to pick several of them from an immigration standpoint. So I started at Wichita State University, and then I wanted to come here. Everybody who asked me said, no, I had the K-State, that's where I want to go. And I had no clue why, but there was just something that is here that is special. I really actually can't tell, honestly. It's just divine. It's just divine, because it was just attracting me here. And then by no means it was easier to navigate to campus, but by no means, I'm not trying to say that, but there was always that somebody, because part what makes K-State special is the fact that everybody is eager to learn, and they're willing to tell you, what, I don't know, but come sit right here and we're gonna work this through together. And I have helped with my testimony. I've helped a lot of my African brothers and sisters when they came here, because back then, as K-State was trying to get up to speed, because Sara was saying that it's deceivingly diverse, this place. You won't think so, but then actually it is. So K-State was trying, I feel like was catching up with that. And part of the big a compliment that KSET had, is that international community being here and them being willing to learn and take all the information. So I basically technically just sat with my advisor to discuss the Cameroonian system, because I went to the French system of school, and so it's a little different than the United States. And you know, I didn't get that sentiment of my advisor saying that, you know what, I don't know, you're gonna have to figure it out yourself. I have no idea. So, because you know, there is one thing to say, figure out with your home country and then bring me the information. But here I had that feeling of, okay, you know what, we're gonna get this together. And what do you have? And I had my advisor trying to like match what looks like. She actually had me explain what my classes were so that she could actually match it with what it is. So how fantastic is that? Like, I was just looking and I was like, look at what I found. And I was all in tears. My first day at K-State was tears every day almost, because Sarah, you said something when you went to Spain. You were more, you thought you knew Spanish. You thought you knew it because you studied Spanish for years. And that's how I actually felt. Like, you know, Cameroon being English and French, we have to like learn English from the get-go. But, you know, going through that proficiency, which makes sense, because the proficiency class is not just, in my mind, it was like learning English again, but it wasn't that. It's actually learning the proficiency of taking a school classes at the university. So that's two different things. And so it was, for me, I was so stubborn of not wanting to go through that path. I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? I can speak English. Look, can't you hear me? And things like that. But then so much patience. There's like a lot of patience. People are patient, and there's like there's one thing to be at the job. There's another thing to be passionate about what you do. And I have encountered at any office that I've been as a student, and now as even one of as staff, that there's always people that are eager to learn, that love their job enough to actually take the time. And that's that small town feel where it's not all the hustle and bustle and doing being speedy and doing everything fast like you would get in bigger cities. And I'm saying that from experience, because I hear my friends say the comparison of that. And then you get to make more friends here that also want to travel, right? To go and visit the United States, which you might not get in other big cities, because they feel like they're already in big cities, they already know a lot, you know. But here, you know, we gather, we just create more friendship here, because you guys get to experience things together. So you have that feel of being secure, being safe. It's very safe here. And also build that patience, learn a lot about yourself. You have that time to learn about yourself, your strength, and how to actually build relationship, you know, with people from around the world, to actually experience this new place that you have chosen to be your future. So yes, thank you so much, Sarah. I really appreciate your time today. It was so great to spend time with you, and Jess, to you know, celebrate this amazing community that we have here, that teaches us to go always above and beyond, and be as little more human as possible. So I really appreciate your time, Sarah. And
Thank
Jen.
you so much for having me.
Yes. Ready? Go Cats! Awesome.